Welcome everyone to the Road to One, where we get to hear about different investors' experiences to get into their first deal. Today we have Daniella Devine. Welcome.
Thanks, John. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited at this whole initiative, helping people and seeing people through to their first deal. It's the biggest hurdle. When you
Mhm.
say like it's the
Oh yeah,
hardest to get over.
yeah. There's so many unknowns that it's just getting started is really difficult.
I think it's super easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Mhm.
I think that's just natural. And it's funny because going back now, I'm going, wow. I really wish there were so many other things, like the basic things they tell you to do, and you just
Mhm.
don't do. You're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you just don't do it, And
Yeah,
that's the stuff where I'm going, you knew. You knew you had to do that stuff. So I'm excited to share some things that people really shouldn't skip.
yeah. That is hilarious because I look back and I like to feel the same way about the things that I've done. But yeah, so let's get into it. What are your avatars?
Yeah. So it took me a while to figure this one out. This was super hard for me, but I am a TC. So for me, I'm really mired. Part of my analysis paralysis and one of the things I've done to help mitigate my own risk is learn how to engineer transactions. And
Mhm.
I did this really at first totally selfishly. I had no plans to do other people's transactions, but it's really, really helped me understand everything I can accomplish in real estate. Um, and I'm a commercial broker. So in California, I'm a licensed commercial broker. Commercial is my asset class. It's my jam. I'm a business owner operator. So I want to be involved in all the things that marry business and real estate. So
Mhm.
I'm not really a buyer right now. I'm not really like a PML, PMP. I'm not really a connector. I'm a TC and I am, doing a lot of business operative work.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, the operations part of it is so underrated. I mean, as a visionary myself, when I first got started, and even 3 years in, I was always chasing that next deal, but then I kind of let a lot of things uh, get quite messy. So yeah, operations
Totally.
is extremely important. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about I guess, where were you at when you decided to get into real estate?
Oh my gosh. Well, I had owned and operated my family's business for 15 years. And we were like just coming out of 2022 and it was a crazy year for me. I had two babies under two. And that year, like I pushed revenue 40%. Like I pushed it 40% higher. And it had been like that slow, that painful, consistent growth that we talk so often about, where it's like
Mhm.
consistency, just be consistent and you're going to get there. And all of a sudden it snowballed for me. I mean, I must have bid huge projects for a year and come in second and third on everyone. And then finally that one year it was like, oh crap, here we go. Um, and my dad was my partner. My dad's my best friend.
Mhm.
And my grandmother started the business in 81. And you know, he we come from a mindset of just the world's going to end. We're going to go broke. We're going to be homeless and be on the street. And, when you come from that mindset, especially my dad,
Mhm.
he was sort of in and out of really challenging financial positions when he was younger. Um, when you come from that, it's really scary and hard to hire. Right. So he
Mhm.
had learned like 30 years to run this very profitable business because he was the one doing all the work. So it's been fantastic for him and this model has worked for him. He never really wanted to be a manager. But when I went and sold all that work, and then I was doing the project management and the accounting and the books and the operations and getting on the forklift and unloading, offloading the semis and running downtown to run guys on the job site. And I had two kids under two and we just fresh out of COVID. It was like, something's got to give. I can't keep
Mhm.
doing this. And I originally joined the Sub 2 mentorship because I needed to put my high income to work. And I was just entered as a buyer. And by the end of my first year in Sub 2, I left the family business, which was really hard. I just thought, The idea of scaling with my dad, it just was never going to work. He kept pushing the carrot out. He was so afraid to hire. He'd be like, well, you just need to sell more. I'm like, okay, well, I sold more. Well, you just need to do this. Okay, but I did this,
Yeah.
and he just never could accept hiring someone and I finally went, I can't keep selling and running myself into the ground. I have to be present. I have to be available, you know? And I had been in sub two for a year, sort of lost, sort of trying to
Mm.
figure out what to do with my money. Yeah, I want to be a buyer, but what the hell does that mean? I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
Um, and a friend came to me and was like, I really just need a TC. Can you just be my TC? Can you just help me figure this out? And I was like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, sure. And it just spiraled into me working full time in real estate. So, yeah.
You had a lot of really good points in there. First, I mean, your avatar is TC, but then you came in as a buyer, right? And then so just talk about how that evolution happened.
Oh my gosh. I think the easiest way to explain it is being too afraid to buy.
Mm.
You're
Mhm.
like in this mentorship where people are doing incredible things, crazy things you
Yeah.
never like you can't even process how batshit some of the stuff people are doing, right?
Yeah.
But it's working. And you're sitting there going, is this fake? Is it fake news? Like, what's happening here? And then you start to see people that are a little bit more like you doing things that you can stomach. And you're
Mhm.
going, well, why am I not doing that?
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was analyzing deals for months and not buying good deals because I was so scared. I was just so scared. And then I finally figured out, you know what? One of the things I can do to mitigate my own risk is learn how the back end of a transaction works. Because right now, everything is so ambiguous and gray. Oh, the contract and the TC and escrow. Escrow was always this proverbial, like gray matter space where
Yeah.
you go, what is escrow? To this day, people go, what does it mean to be an escrow? And I would have never knew that if I wouldn't have become a TC.
Yeah. I think a lot of investors still don't even know what that means. I don't think I know what that means. I just know that you have to open escrow to buy a house.
Yeah, well, you don't have to, right? You don't have to know what
Yeah,
it means. So it's like delegate and elevate, right?
right.
Like,
Exactly. Another point that you had talked about is delegating and how that's a difficult thing for your father. I think that's another underrated skill is being able to let something go.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Excuse her. Sorry.
Yeah. I think it's so cool that you brought your daughter on with
I
you.
know. Well, it's one of those things where that was the hardest part when I was owning a brick and mortar business that I had to go
Mhm.
in and be present was that every time the kids were sick, the kids were in full-time care. And every
Mhm.
time they were sick, I had anxiety because I was
Yeah.
going, oh my God, my phone's going to blow up. People are going to be yelling at me to be here, be there, be here. And right now I get to do podcasts and work, and my newborn is with me and
Mhm.
in like perpetuity. I don't have any plans for her to go anywhere anytime soon. So thank you for being kind about that. I
Oh, of
appreciate
course.
it.
I mean, that's the whole reason why I was looking for a a work from home job, like a remote job,
Yeah.
because I want to be able to see, even though it's stressful sometimes and they're running in during
Oh yeah.
meetings and everything, but I'd rather be here just watching them run run amok than not be at home.
Yeah.
Um, you also mentioned being lost in that first year. I think that that is something that a lot of people don't realize is that I was lost. I mean, I was doing deals for 3 years, but I was still lost. And
Really?
so
Did you
talk,
feel that way?
yeah, because I mean, I started off doing the burn method, right? And then uh, got tired of that. So then I went into lending for my mom. I did some land flipping, right? And I thought I was an integrator for the longest time and realized after being an integrator for, so many months that this is not what I want to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's okay to be lost and find your way. And it takes time. I mean, for you, it only took a year. For me, it took 3 years.
Well, there's so much iteration in what we do. I'm still learning, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I have these businesses now and I'm going, okay, this is great. This is awesome. This is active income. But at the same
Mhm.
point in time, going like reaching back into my investment goals, it's always going to be a struggle. And it's
Mhm.
always going to change, right? Based on
Yeah.
trends and what partners are doing and friends are doing, and then they bring you into something and you're
Hmm.
trying something you would have never, it's like,
Yeah.
but that's how we grow. And so I think that continuing to stay uncomfortable in this, I have to say, like, when I talk to people about what I'm doing these days, they have no
Mhm.
idea what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like it takes
Mhm.
it takes a real special kind of person to want to work this hard. And I'm not even just talking about me. I'm talking about the people that we surround ourselves with.
Yeah.
We're all clawing up a mountain in hopes of finding a place in life that feels right.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
not everything we do makes sense all the time. And so
Right.
it's just this constant hustle and grind, and it's not for everybody.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. They look at people in this situation and they ask why. Like, if you don't do anything for the rest of your life, you're gonna be fine. And I get that from my parents a lot too.
Yeah,
Saying,
I
yeah,
bet.
but I want to do more things. I want to do more stuff. I like you. Your cup is
Did you
spot
see
on.
it?
Yeah.
It's Chaos Corner. A client made this for me,
Yeah.
and someone who solves problems you never knew existed in ways that will blow your mind.
Yeah. I'm gonna
So
have to put in the description your episode for the Get Creative podcast with
sure.
Pace, so people can really understand what is it you go through.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's everyone has a sordid tale, right? Some are more interesting than others, but
Yeah.
they keep us going.
Yeah.
It's the human condition, right, John?
Hmm. Yeah. Another thing that you mentioned is chasing comfort, and that's something that I didn't realize either. Is I thought if I'm in this world and I'm going out and doing certain things, the comfort zone changes, and then you shouldn't be sitting there, right? You need to get out of it. It's a constant. The comfort zone changes. You're in it, then you got to get out of it. Then that'll change again, and it's a
Yeah,
constant battle.
it is. It's an ego thing too.
Yeah.
I was talking to a colleague, friend, client today. Everyone's turning into friends, which is so amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like they're reading that book, Buy Back Your Time,
Hmm.
and feeling like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I was addicted to this level of just chaos,
Hmm.
And that I found that really interesting because I think there's a part of me that is always going, do I have to be this tired? Do I have to push through this? Do I have to continue to do this? And I almost don't even give myself the chance to do anything different. It's just
Hmm.
I'm so head down and so focused right now, but it's true. There's a
Yeah.
level of, and that comes back to challenges and delegation. Like when you're so in it, it's so hard to pass off things that can create space in your life for these people,
Right.
experiences and fun,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Just fun. So it's a trip, this whole entrepreneurial maze.
Yeah. It's a crazy trip.
It is.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, so many great points in just the introduction. So let's talk about your first deal. I guess where were you at when you got your first deal, and how did you find it?
So I honestly was focused on Tennessee. Like for a year, I was analyzing deals in Memphis. I was so
Mhm.
obsessed with the Memphis market, even though um it was a challenging market because if you were on the wrong street, could be a really bad investment, right?
Mhm.
But I just felt like Tennessee was a really great place for me to start. I'm in California, so for me here, a lot of things just don't feel immediately breachable. That's what I'll
Mhm.
say. They're
Yeah.
not out of reach because nothing's ever out of reach. It's just
Mhm.
immediately reachable.
Yeah.
And I kind of poked around in some Pacific Northwest states, but I wasn't really eager to buy in the Pacific Northwest.
Mhm.
And my now client, friend, colleague, all the things, he came to me with this deal and goes, "Hey, look, I've got this cute townhome in Bend, Oregon." And I had heard really cool things about Bend, right?
Mhm.
And so I do this little thing that you should never do. Um, I go outside my market. I go outside, like mistake number one,
Mhm.
going willy-nilly into a market you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Mistake number two, going on YouTube and figuring out how epic it looks
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
getting emotional about it. Because all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, I never considered owning anything in the Pacific Northwest. And if I can get it sub two, then I can get in.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm going and I'm envisioning my kids playing in Bend and skiing and river rafting and all the things. And I'm getting real emotional about it. And that was a problem. That turned out to be a big problem. And so I'm going over the terms of this thing and they're good. You know, it's not like the greatest deal ever, but
Mhm.
it's good. I'm going, okay, this could be a midterm rental. And at the time, I had this high income problem, right? And I was
Mhm.
going, even if I have vacancy in this, technically I can get that, you know, working against, you know, bringing down my tax liability. I can be doing something. Excuse me, are you okay down there? Are you gonna be okay? Um, and I thought to myself, vacancy is good. That means I can get up there with my family. I'm an hour flight away. It's gonna be fantastic. The townhome was right across the street from the country club golf at the base of a mountain. It was like a 5-year-old build. It was clean. It was just designed and newly furnished. It was all the things. And
Right.
I'm going, okay, this is perfect. I've never considered an HOA. And I convinced myself an HOA was a good thing because I can't be there. Right.
Right.
And like
Yeah.
all of these little things I'm convincing myself of. And you know, my dad's so old school and conservative. I tell him this and he goes, are you telling me you're about to buy a property that you're not even going to go and see? And I said, yeah. And that was another mistake. So it was like all these little things stacking up, you know? And the deal went super smooth. It was my first transaction that I actually did. It was my
Mhm.
own deal and my first transaction. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, Loved working with this wholesaler who became a colleague, client, and friend. Um, and when we closed, and I flew my whole family up there to make sure that, you know, we got it set up to be the midterm rental we needed, you know, put on the lock and all this stuff.
Mhm.
I was even more emotional because it was beautiful. Bend is gorgeous. It was like, I can't believe I just bought a place in freaking Bend. Are you
Mhm.
kidding me right now? Like, this is amazing. My kids loved it. They loved the town, just everything. It was like such an amazing, great weekend for my family. Came home and I did all the things I thought I was supposed to do, right? Like watched all of Tanisha Epps' stuff. I listed it on every freaking midterm thing you can imagine. And now, to be fair, going back a little bit, when I was comping this thing, it was a little hard.
Mhm.
Like that made me feel a little uneasy. It was in a part of Bend, it's like in the middle of a multi-million dollar neighborhood and it had a like this court right up above the community college, beautiful college. And thought to myself, student housing, like all the things, right?
Yeah.
But there wasn't any other townhomes to comp it with. And there weren't really many things like that were renting midterm wise that I could comp it with. So I
Mhm.
was going, it's going to be okay though, because of all these other things, right? This is going to make sense. It's got to make sense to me. Long story short, um, I start to have a real serious problem getting anyone in this thing, like anyone. And after setting it up, this funny thing happened with the PITI because I changed insurance from homestead to short-term rental and
Mhm.
I left it in escrow. I didn't prepay it. They jacked up my PITI by 400 a month.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
yeah, and the midterm rental was already going to be not super profitable. You know, like the Bend
Mhm.
market became soft. It was really, really, really hot during the pandemic, but I must have caught it like at the very tail end of that where it started to become soft. There's a large tech migration up there. There's people up there that have money,
Mhm.
but rents have come down. you know? And so all these tiny little things started to happen. And I mean, I made sure that beautiful photos, right? Like I went the extra mile to make sure that this thing, I mean, everyone that came to saw it was like, this place is beautiful. Like, thanks, that's great. Why aren't you staying? And I had my first guest after about a month and a half. And at this point, I'm feeling pretty anxious, right? Because I realize with bills, because you got to keep all the utilities on when you have a
Mhm.
midterm rental,
Yeah.
that bills are basically like with everything in bills, I'm looking at like 4,100 a month of carrying costs.
Jeez.
Yeah. So the whole Tennessee thing versus Pacific Northwest, that's a huge runway. The Delta is massive.
Right.
Carrying a property in Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, 2 grand a month, maybe. Carrying a property in the Pacific Northwest, a lot different. After my first guest, um, they I got so frustrated because I couldn't get any other listings. I had a property management company go in there and was thinking to myself, you know what? I just don't have time. I don't have time to manage this thing as a midterm rental, and I'm not doing it justice. Like this is my fault. You know, it's my fault. I can't get anyone in here. I'm not cold calling corporate people and insurance relocation people. This has got to be my own fault, you know?
Hmm.
And the first guest left, and I hired like a midterm rental property management company to come in, and they call me and they go, you know, this place smells so bad. And I'm going, what are you talking about? Like everything was new. What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, I mean, they had like a bird and several dogs, and like there's holes in the carpet. And I'm going, what are you talking about? And so they start sending me pictures. This is the first guest, okay?
Yeah.
Start
Hmm.
sending me pictures. And they said, we had a cleaner in there and she was vacuuming and carpet fibers were coming up and sort of revealing holes in the carpet. Now, mind you, my family business is flooring. So I know flooring, right?
Hmm.
And I've never seen this. We've been in business for 45 years. The dog dug holes in the carpet and they super glued the carpet fibers back into the, they glued it in. This was a really successful lawyer that was staying there.
Really.
And I'm like, what is, so this was my first experience, right? After just being so desperate for somebody.
Hmm.
And I have the property management company in there and they start juicing me for all these different things. And I'm going, that's not in my contract. That's not this. That's not that. And I start to go, okay, this is not what I intended it to be. I didn't think it was going to be this hard, you know? Fast forward 2 more months. So at this point, it's been empty for 3 months after my first guest that like did all that damage. And I'm going, I'm bleeding. I'm bleeding money right now. I had
Hmm.
was a couple months pregnant with Isla, third kid, live in the San Francisco Bay Area, don't work for the family business anymore, like not a high income earner anymore.
Right.
And I'm going, what did I do? I'm bleeding cash. You know, my entire entry, I had paid cash.
Mm.
So I came in with all of my own money because I had money that I needed to do something with, right?
Right. Hmm.
So it just started to feel like a series of very bad decisions and like unfortunate events.
Right.
Um, and I started to get panicky. I was like, I can't afford this. Like, this is so irresponsible of me. Again, this is my fault, my fault, my fault. Like, how could I have made such a poor buy? Right. Um, and again, I'm calling agents, property managers. Is there something wrong with my unit? Is my unit is it too high priced? Can the market not bear, you know,
Mm.
is it oversaturated? What's going on? I started to find out all these little things. I'm close to the Reverend Bend, but not close enough. Right.
Right.
I'm like competitive on pricing, but not competitive enough. You know, like
Yeah.
my unit's really, really nice, but there's nicer ones in better locations that are cheaper. and a lot of them, you know? So there's
Yeah.
all these little things that are happening. Finally, I go, you know what? I don't even care. I'm going to lease option this sucker to an investor. Like, I need this off my books. At this point, I'm in the whole 75 grand. Like, between the entry, the 10 grand or so I had to throw into it when I went up there, just making sure bells and whistles were in place, all the
Hmm.
marketing. The marketing adds up when you're
Yeah.
listing midterm rentals and short-term rentals.
Hmm.
Um, Couple months of vacancy, you know, like it added up real quick. And I'm going, oh my God, this is a complete loss. I start to like go through it with my investor friends and just go, what can we do with this property? HOA said no short-term rentals. So can't do short-term rental.
Hmm.
I could have done a long-term rental and basically be losing about 1,500 a month instead of
But
4 grand
is that with war chest or without?
with,
Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was, you know, not going to be
Yeah.
that silly.
Yeah.
Um, but that just felt at that point, I was going, that's not even worth it. Because I would have to liquidate all of the furniture that was just put in there, you
Hmm.
know? So it's like all these tiny little things. Um, I called, I must have called probably like 15 people in our mentorship that I really trust and gone through every single scenario. Like, what can be done with this property? How can I fix this? Because it was a condo, it wasn't that big, couldn't do like rent by room, sober living. Like, none of those things
Right.
really worked for this property. And so I had an investor, I put on Craigslist, lease to own, and I was like, I don't even want to recover the money. I just want to stop bleeding every month. You know,
Right.
I was starting to feel like a really irresponsible partner to my husband, you know, and just the whole thing just felt like a silly dream that I built up in my head that was not a smart investment decision, you know?
Hmm.
Um, it was really, hard. It's really embarrassing. You know, it's really embarrassing. Um, So I had this investor go and she was interested in buying it. She goes, I'm going to go check it out. And I said, great, go check it out. She calls me, unit's beautiful. Everything's really great. Great neighborhood. And she goes, I'm just going to hang out here for a little while and like scope out the neighborhood. And I was like, yeah, do what you got to do. She calls me a couple hours later and she goes, did you know that your house, your condo is one door down from like a 9 unit multifamily like juvenile delinquent sober home? And I'm
Um,
going, no, what are you talking about? Whole court was brand new build. They all look the same,
yeah.
right? So I was there
Mm.
for a weekend and
Right.
I didn't notice anything out of the norm. Everything was just fresh, new paint, looked great, beautiful landscaping, didn't notice a thing. She goes, I was sitting in my car. She goes, mind you, it's snowing. And there was like a 20-year-old girl in a tank top and shorts, chain smoking outside of the facility. And I noticed like a hotel cart, like for cleaning. And she
Mhm.
goes, and I thought to myself, this is really weird for this neighborhood. You know, maybe this is luxury student housing. I mean, who's pushing around one of those clean carts? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And she stays and hangs out. And this girl's out there for like an hour. And she's going, what is this is weird. And so she looks it up. And it is literally a halfway house for for youth that are getting out of juvie and need like a transitional home. And she asked me straight up, she goes, you think anyone with young kids is going to want to live on this court? And I said, no. She goes, do you think any senior citizens are going to want to live on this court? And I said, probably not. And she goes, not a lot of people are going to want to be here long term because you have kids that are dealing with these struggles on a really tight cul-de-sac.
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Right. And then I start looking at all the houses on the court and they've all been devalued. They've all gone down in price. People are trying to offload them in the last 2 years, ever since this was built. I mean, I went to the planning department, I pulled the plans, I figured out when it was done building. Like, I went through a whole timeline in my head and you could see the entire court people struggling to rent over the years, people struggling to sell, and doing it for really low cost. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I really, really biffed it. Like, this is bad. So I call them and I go, do you want to rent my, do you want to lease to own this thing? And they're like, no, it's not big enough. So at that point, I'm pissed. I'm pretty pissed because I
Mhm.
feel like if I would have known this facility was one door down from my unit, I would have never bought it because I would have known I could have dealt with serious issues with that. And then I
Right.
felt like a turkey because I'm going, that thing is fully freaking furnished. There's big screen TVs in there, and it's a door down from kids that just got out of juvenile hall. That's super responsible. Thank goodness no one's broken in there. It's just like kind
Mm.
of going through all the things, John. And what came next was definitely a sub two story. I looked through my paperwork and my disclosures, and at the bottom of my disclosure for Oregon, the person that sold this to me, the person that owned it was an agent, and they worked for EXP Realty. I
Mhm.
work for EXP Commercial. And at the very bottom, it goes, is there anything else you want to disclose about the home or the environment? And they said no. And so I called the agent and I go, I have called you. He's a relocation specialist. So I talked to him quite a bit throughout my struggles trying to get this place rented.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? Why didn't you tell me? Like, I'm in the hole. I am bleeding. There's no more money to be throwing at this thing, And why didn't you tell me this place was next to a halfway home for kids? Like, what were you thinking? And he goes, oh, well, it's never been a problem in the past. So I got off the phone with him and I just started thinking to myself, what am I going to do? He offered to list it for me. For me. And he
Yeah.
goes, I'll try to give you a discount on my commission. And I
How
gave him
nice of him.
I gave him 30K out of pocket, like 30K cash to close to the seller. And I was just like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. And so this is the beauty of buying creatively. When you buy creatively, and I mention this not for irresponsible buyers, I mention this for people that are doing this not because they have to, but because they want to, and because they're responsible buyers. When you buy creative, you buy with leverage. My name was not in the debt. His name
Mhm.
was in the debt.
Right.
And he kind of screwed me. He kind of screwed me pretty good. I couldn't offload this thing. I was bleeding cash here. He's sitting comfortably down the street, like counting my dollars that I gave him just 6 months ago. It's been 6 months. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to have a third baby. I can't get up there and like there's nothing I can do. All I can do is hope that somebody wants to rent this thing
Mhm.
and that I'm gonna have vacancy maybe 50% of the year. Like that's a terrible investment.
Right.
Who wants to buy a house and have vacancy 50% of the freaking time? Um, so I had like a bunch of moral come to Jesus conversations with people. And finally I approach him and I go, you're gonna take back this house. That's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take it back because I'm not paying the mortgage on this thing anymore. This thing is a loser. And I'm frustrated. I feel like you took advantage of me. You saw that I had young kids. What made you think this was like a good decision? You know what I mean? Kind of like you're
Mhm.
an agent. What about your fiduciary duty? Like, what's the deal here? I contacted lawyers and they had said, this is going to be a tough one. It's going to be tough if he doesn't agree to just quit claim, like let you quit claim it back.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of I kind of came to him and was just like, I'm tapped, man. I'm tapped. You've tapped me and I don't want to play anymore. And he said, I'm so sorry. I'll take back the house.
Wow.
So after a couple weeks of working with an attorney in Oregon and quit claiming it, and getting it back. He lists it and sells it for 50 grand more, which I would have anyways, like regardless, I would have had to come out of pocket because I
Right.
would have, you know what I mean? Like it still didn't make sense for me even to
Hmm.
put it on market. I had talked to agents and they were like, you're going to be so lucky to get this thing offloaded. And
Right.
the relocation agent, he's there. So he was able to sell it and put more money back in his pocket. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, and he probably didn't disclose any information.
No, he didn't disclose. So, you know, I learned a lot on that one. Exit strategies, you need to take them seriously.
Hmm.
You really need to pick a market and stick to your markets. And if you are buying something outside of your market, you need to partner with somebody who's a specialist in the market. You know,
Hmm.
you need to build a team there before you close, guys. Before you close, you want to have a handyman, two handymen. You want to know who to call, cleaners, the whole bit. That was another huge thing. Every time I had to do something up there, I had to pay someone to do it because I
Right.
didn't know anyone there, right? I didn't build a team. I had no contacts, no relationships. So I just thanked God that he took it back without a fuss. And when everything was said and done, he goes, I'm really sorry this didn't work out. Thank you so much for being such a professional. Oh my God, I
Uh,
could murder this guy.
so I'm guessing you haven't worked with him since.
No, no.
That,
So,
I mean, that story highlights something that I don't think, I mean, I didn't know when I first got started. I had a good experience with the first agent that I worked with, but the second agent brought me a house from a wholesaler that she was working with and suggested, oh, full price offer is going to get you the house and it's only going to cost you 10 grand to fix it up and it's going to be worth like 140. So I thought, okay, no problem. So I
sure.
did it, bought the house. It's only supposed to be like a 1 or 2 month rehab, ended up turning into 6 to 8 months and cost me 45. Come
Oh,
to realize that, and then I went back on the county records to see just the sale records and the person that assigned it to me that I didn't even know made 50 grand on the deal. So that was an eye-opening experience. Not to say that, all agents are bad, but, not all of them are looking out for your best interest either. So
no,
really
no.
building that team, vetting the team that you're building is super important.
These are things that we don't pay a lot of attention to because we feel like the hardest part is finding the deal.
Right.
I'm chasing a deal. I just want a deal. I want a deal so bad. And
Yeah.
it's like, do you? Are you ready? Are
Yeah.
you have your ducks in a row to support a deal?
Right.
And people really overlook that. And to be fair, I think this is because there's so many people that make lucky buys and it works
Hmm.
out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I bought this house and I midterm rented it and I'm making 500 a month and it's so easy. And and then people
Yeah.
are telling those stories. They're not telling the stories of yeah, my short-term rental did 25 grand this month in Kalispell, Montana, but it was vacant for 3 months in every winter and all the pipes burst and cost me 25 grand. Like no one's talking about the fact that we are as investors, we're not running with the bag. We're constantly floating and spreading that money out
Hmm.
over good and bad months, good and bad quarters.
Yeah.
And I think that it takes a long time to figure out that this is a business.
Hmm.
It's a business. And when you don't treat it as a business, you suffer.
Oh yeah,
You
for sure. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, and it's not for the faint of heart because it's money.
Yeah.
And people have different relationships with money and money is emotional and it's crazy because everybody I told this story to, most people have never brought in or lost 75 grand cash, right?
Yeah.
And they go sit there and the whole time I'm telling them they go 75 grand. And I literally kid you not. when I found out about that facility, I was so relieved. I almost danced a jig because I thought to myself, okay, this isn't all your fault.
Right.
One. Two, you've got leverage, right?
Mhm.
Three, um, I just had this insane sense of relief because I knew I I didn't have to convince myself anymore to make it work. I was like,
Right.
this was a bad buy. Who gives a shit? Move on. 75 grand done. But the more important thing, like the most important lesson I learned, the most important thing, I was so happy that I got to a point in my life where I had that money in an account.
Yeah.
That was the success. The success was I got to a point in my career where I had that kind of money sitting there that I could make all these mistakes and not go into debt,
Right.
and not walk out of this thing just beaten, bloody, and in debt. I got to walk out free and clear. Yeah, I lost money, but I also learned there's just I can't even so many layers of lessons,
Right.
and the fact that never buy a condo, never HOA, never buy a residential. There's so many things where I'm going, never buy an Oregon. Like, like I'm never gonna do this. Like,
Yeah.
I've cut so many things out, and this does not make me afraid of creative. I'm not afraid. I feel more empowered than ever. And I constantly tell people that are scared to purchase creative, I go, look, as long as you do the work and treat it as a business and build the team and, become proficient in your exit strategy, at the end of the day, you hold the cards. There's no other investment that you get to make in life where you actually are the one holding the cards like that. We are at a great advantage when we buy sub two, and if you're responsible, it could be a wonderful investment strategy. Now, if you're an asshole, you can screw a lot of people over. It's a terrible thing, and that's why it gets a bad reputation because there's a lot of bad buyers and
Mhm.
unprepared investors that walk into this and are abusive with that power. You know, in my situation, I felt this guy really tried to take the bag, and I was going to go, no, you're going to take this house. That's what you're going to do. And we're both going to just go our separate ways.
Yeah.
So crazy.
What a story. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, that is something that you won't see on social media
Oh, no.
or none of
No,
that.
no, no. I posted about how excited I was to buy it,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
I have shared privately and on one other podcast, my podcast, the story because I don't want to it's delicate information, right? It's embarrassing. It's
Hmm.
embarrassing to make bad decisions like this. It's embarrassing to lose money like this. Um, and I just want to be really clear with the message where I just, it's so important to be responsible when you start buying real estate. And if you're going to be a creative buyer, it's important to be a responsible creative buyer, and to
Hmm.
not take advantage of the power and the leverage that you have when you buy creatively. But in bad situations, if you get put in a bad situation, a bank's never going to just take back a house because it was a bad buy.
Yeah. There's
So
no return policy.
there's no return policy, right? I mean, it's just wild. It's wild.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. I mean, you provided so much value and so many lessons learned. So thank you for that. How can people reach out to you? How can people work with you?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Instagram is easiest. You can reach me at the Daniella, Daniella, Devine, Devine. And we talk a lot about transactions, we talk about commercial real estate, talk about just our geeky obsession with all things investing. So
Awesome. So your Instagram will be in the description. We'll also have a link to the book that you mentioned, The Buy Back Your Time, as well as your episode on the Get Creative podcast.
awesome. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you again for coming. It's definitely a lot of fun.
Awesome. Great to see you again.
You too.